Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, continued calls for Cameroon's elections over the weekend to be annulled as the scandal over apparently fake election mission observers deepens. The group were gushing and giving a press conference and expressing their praise earlier this week, but Transparency International, who they say they were with, say they didn't send in any observers. Also, police in Tanzania hunt 2 white foreigners after the country's richest man is kidnapped at gunpoint. 43-year-old Mohamed Duji was abducted on his way into the gym in Dar es Salaam. And a new tax on money transfers brought in this month has led to the rise in the price of basic goods. Many Zimbabweans fear the country is on the edge of another bout of hyperinflation. But first, Cameroonian opposition candidates continue to call for Sunday's presidential poll to be scrapped. Official results haven't been announced yet, but there have been accusations of fraud, particularly over a group of apparently bogus election observers. Though they weren't part of any official mission, that did not stop them holding a press conference this week and effusively praising Cameroon's vote.
I thought it went very smoothly, and at the same time it showed great democratic emancipation.
We witnessed discussions where there was debate, disagreement and confrontation. It was really interesting. It's a good sign. Personally, I don't know much about Africa, and I was pleasantly surprised.
What I saw yesterday during the vote counting was a real lesson in democracy. In the vote counting, there was no room for anything else. The president of the polling office was there. Everything was handled very clearly.
So, though they claimed to have been working with Transparency International, the group denies any affiliation. Critics of President Paul Biya are speculating that the faux observers were paid by the government. Our Indira Etting tells us more.
News of the presence of the supposed Transparency International observers in Cameroon broke on Monday, the 8th of October 2018, one day after the presidential elections in the country. According to state media, the CRTV, the team of Transparency International had expressed satisfaction over the entire conduct of the presidential elections in Cameroon. However, the president of Transparency International Cameroon, Charles Nguini, says the individuals had been part of a training organized by the anti-corruption watchdog in Cameroon, but they had not been assigned to any particular mission in Cameroon or beyond.
We have trained a few people. Those who claim to be Transparency International observers were also trained alongside the organization with our other partner, Afro Leadership. But we have no idea how after that training session, it was claimed that we had Transparency International observers.
While Transparency International has accepted apologies from the 7 accused imposters, the CRM party of Professor Maurice Kamto has decided to drag the state of Cameroon and the CRTV to court for attempting to manipulate the results of the disputed presidential elections in Cameroon.
Well, Indira there for us. Meanwhile, the count continues in Cameroon. The candidates calling for the vote to be annulled also believe that there were other irregularities. Despite the controversy, President Paul Biya is still expected to win. Our team was in court this week as challenges to the poll were brought. They sent us this report.
On a normal day, this is a court of justice. But this Wednesday, it is a place for a post-electoral battle after Sunday's disputed presidential race in Cameroon. Before a magistrate, 3 groups, each of them comprising a state representative, 1 from the Electoral Commission and 1 party representing an opposition candidate. In these boxes are the polling reports which have come under condemnation over the past couple of hours. But according to the state representative, some of these alleged irregularities are only typing errors.
We have come across figures that don't add up. Some of the figures found in the polling reports cannot be found in the computers.
3 party commissions like this one will validate polling reports in all 58 divisions in Cameroon. In the event of further disputes over the results, only the reports of the Electoral Commission, ELECAM, will be taken into account.
The polling reports were brought in by ELECAM. When the time comes, we will compare them with our own figures. Only then we will know if they're different from the polling stations. As it stands, I can't confirm anything.
At the ELECAM head office in Yaoundé, lawyers of the Electoral Commission like this one are getting set for the post-electoral battle. Several files sent in by Cameroonians contesting the elections are waiting to be reviewed.
In this case, for example, the plaintiff says he could not vote, but he witnessed fraud firsthand. At ELECAM, we only have the law to guide us. We are going to defend ourselves. We have 48 hours to forward our response to the Constitutional Council.
The Constitutional Council is the only competent body which will examine and decide on these complaints. The opposition has slammed the institution for their partiality, as all 9 members of the commission were appointed by President Paul Biya, who is himself a candidate. The body has until October 22 to sort out any disputes over the 25,000 polling reports.
Tanzanian police are investigating the kidnapping of one of Africa's youngest billionaires. 43-year-old Mohamed Dewji was abducted by masked gunmen as he headed into the gym at a luxury hotel in Dar es Salaam. Dewji heads up the METL group that operates across the continent in sectors that include agriculture and insurance. In 2016, his wealth is estimated at around $1.5 billion. Now, the city is generally safe for high-profile figures. Security has been tightened at airports and the borders, and police believe that 2 white foreigners were behind the kidnapping.
We are still closely following this case, but I can only say all this has been accomplished through the help of 2 foreigners. There were 2 Europeans who were responsible for hijacking and kidnapping this famous businessman. The reason behind his kidnapping is still not clear. We want to assure you that the police force in the region is working very closely with the intelligence services.
Well, Zimbabwe is planning on cutting government jobs and taxing electronic transactions in a bid to tackle a currency crisis. But the slew of new taxes has led to skyrocketing prices and left people on edge. Many fear the economic instability could still bring about a repeat of the 2008 crisis that saw inflation hit 500 billion%. Brian Quinn tells us more.
In Harare, motorists wait in line for hours to fuel up, unsure if there will be any gas left for them by the time they get to the pump.
I'm angry, and I think somebody should be made accountable. In this case, our government.
Nearly a year after ousting longtime dictator Robert Mugabe, Zimbabwe is once again in the midst of a currency crunch. Supermarkets are rationing goods as prices skyrocket. Stocks of medicine are running low. The latest crisis erupted last week when the finance minister announced a 2% tax on electronic transactions. Many Zimbabweans rely on such payments as US dollars, the country's main currency, are scarce, and the government's parallel currency, the local bond note, is both distrusted and rapidly depreciating. The shortage of foreign currency is exacerbated by ballooning public debt.
Now we've got domestic debt that is bigger than external debt. Now we've got a budget deficit that is over 30% of GDP. So we have to cut expenditure.
Decades of mismanagement under Mugabe have left the Zimbabwean economy in tatters. Unemployment is estimated at some 90%. The economy has shrunk by half since 2000, when many white-owned farms were seized. The finance ministry has proposed a series of reforms, including cutting government jobs to bring down costs. The IMF estimates that state wages take up 90% of government revenues. The current situation has many in the country fearful of a return to hyperinflation last seen in 2008, when the value of the Zimbabwean dollar fell some 500 billion%, forcing the government to abandon the currency altogether.
Now, people living around Lake Victoria are now particularly fearful about ferry trips over its waters. 2 weeks ago, 228 people died when an overloaded vessel sunk in Tanzanian waters. The lake also borders Uganda and Kenya. Whatever their nationality, the accident highlighted the risk to all those forced to use poorly maintained boats to get about. This report is from the lake's Kenyan banks. Take a look.
Lake Victoria, Africa's largest lake, straddles the borders of Kenya, Tanzania and Uganda. Here in Kenya, no one has forgotten the tragedy that took place last month in Tanzania, just 200 kilometers away. An overloaded ferry sank, killing 228 people. The captain of this Kenyan ship says such an accident would not happen here.
We don't have a lot because we have no movement of people, so many people. No. In Tanzania, I think it was a market day, so they got so many people.
Passengers are still shocked by what happened in neighboring Tanzania.
People are obviously very worried. When you hear of such incidents taking place, and especially when so few people survive, you end up being very scared.
I know how to swim because it was compulsory in the school I went to, but I can't imagine myself swimming in such deep waters in the lake because at school it was just a small swimming pool. I am not sure about deep waters.
Many people in the region don't know how to swim. A 2014 report by the World Health Organization found that more drownings take place in Africa than anywhere else in the world. That year, 8 in 100,000 people drowned in Africa, double the European figure.
Well, that's it for Eye on Africa. Thanks for joining us. Do so again. Take care.